We don't care if you're white. Don't care if you're black.
It's doing that.
We don't care if you're gay. We're all under attack. We don't care if you're rich. Don't care if you're poor. We just know what we're fighting for. Sing it. Real women vote for Trump. We don't need no liberal Trump. Yeah, real women vote for Trump. All right, are we live?
Yeah, we're on.
Sorry, I was just singing my favorite song for a second.
That's a big one. We're under Just Chatting. We're live. This is the Sour Source Talk Show.
Sour Source Talk Show coming into the mix, yeah.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about a few random topics here and there. Get to know us a little bit. If any viewers eventually join, we can hopefully chat with them. They can ask us whatever, get our thoughts, talks, opinions, those kind of things. So, as we're going to probably end up uploading this later on, just so people know, we do have this will be available in podcast form in the coming couple of days. And you can find us on most major platforms. At this very moment of recording, we're on Spotify and Pocket Casts under Sour Source. Eventually, we will be on the others, Blueberry, Apple Podcasts. It's just taking some time to get them approved. So, excellent. So, if anybody does end up going to those platforms and looking that stuff up, you will catch the first episode of a separate podcast, which I think will be congealed into one.
Yeah, I think that's still the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we'll just try to make a conscious effort because not everybody wants to talk politics 24/7 like I do.
Yeah, and I'm also not going to brag and say like I'm very well versed in politics, so I definitely don't think that I have the political knowledge to deep dive on a weekly podcast about like the intricacies of certain politics.
Yeah, exactly. So we're just the biggest thing is going to be current events. We're just going to get into different things that we find interesting. We're just going to talk them out, and like I said, if anybody joins in, we can get some questions in. We'll have rotating casts. Sometimes there'll be 3, sometimes 4 of us, and we'll just happy to have a growing audience. I hope someday. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also stream games.
Yep,
occasionally. You can head on to our YouTube channel and get some of that, and we'll also be streaming here. So we got a little bit of projects in the works. Sour Source is the name for all of them.
It's our new brand. We're just gonna have all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. I'm still a little bitter about the name change, but it's fine.
We'll get there.
Yeah,
that'll be huge.
Yeah,
and then
Mad Comrade would have been
bring yours back.
Mad Comrade would have been the better. Get into the comments. Vote for it. Tell them right now. Tell them that Mad Comrade, also Cocoa Rebels was my second choice. Those were both good ideas that got shot down by the group.
They'll come back. They can all be their own brand eventually. It's an umbrella.
Rebels.
It's an umbrella.
Cocoa Rebels would have been the move.
Cocoa Rebels is good. I did focus it to a few people too, just to get other input, just to see.
Mm-hmm.
And
tell me it didn't win. Tell me Cocoa Rebels didn't win. Lie to me.
You know what the most popular one was? Moron John.
Dude, we can't put all of our stuff out there because now that it's in the zeitgeist
so I trademarked those. Everybody, don't copy.
Don't copy.
They're 100% trademarked. Don't look it up though.
Moron John is my favorite too.
That's a show that will be coming later from us. So
it's funny that like dumb people are like the last group that it's okay to make fun of. Like everyone else is no longer like fair game. But if a guy's dumb, you can call your podcast Moron John, and nobody's gonna have an outrage about it.
Yeah, I mean,
John's just a moron.
I mean, it's just about being objective. It's all about objectivity. It's literally what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
when somebody's being dumb.
But Moron John, and then we had we were kicking around the idea of like making Moron John into a character, and then we just instinctually gave him a southern accent. Like that was a little wrong.
Well, what are you gonna do? It happens. I have 4 voices that I default to. 3 of them are southern. So.
Yeah, I can do an all right Spanish accent and an all right English accent, but that's about it.
How English? Are we talking like, hello, governor?
I can go Cockney, or I could go like refined British. I
listened to another podcast one time, and I don't remember exactly who was on it, but So one of them asked the other guy, like, how do you do an Australian accent? And they said, you do a British accent, but end every sentence in a question.
But remember Jim Jeffries was talking about doing
Love Jim Jeffries.
doing a South African accent. He's like, a lot of people can't tell the difference between Australian and South African. So just picture my accent, but everything I say, I finish with punching a black guy in the face.
That's messed up.
That's apartheid for you, brother.
Yeah, it is. That's a rough. Ooh, you opened it rough.
Hey guys, you guys want to talk about apartheid and how European settlers kind of ravaged Africa?
Oh, 100%.
maybe not get into that.
Yeah,
right
no,
now.
we don't need to get into that. But in episode 1 of what was once infighting, I don't know. We called it infighting, but it's all congealing. So
It
anyway,
was far too civil of a conversation
It really
to
was.
warrant the name infighting.
yeah, when we find a very hard right winger to join our crew, we will we will resume that name.
Yeah, because I think that we both kind of fall to the left a little bit, and I think that the actual difference
bit.
between our political beliefs is that I'm probably a little bit further.
Oh yeah.
But I'm at the end of the day, I'm a rational guy because I have what I believe and what I wish the world would be. But I'm not like blind to the realities of
Right.
like what is actually possible.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I feel you. I like to be as rational as I can be. Like, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but if you bring me some good facts and some good reasoning,
Sure.
I will 100% listen. I'll change an opinion.
Yeah.
I root everything I do based in facts,
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not above changing my mind if somebody comes with like a compelling argument. And I'll definitely
Keyword's compelling.
Yeah, I definitely will look into things because I do like getting out of the echo chamber every once in a while.
Oh,
So I'll
yeah.
listen to like Michael Savage and Ben
Yeah.
Shapiro.
Oh, I forgot about Michael Savage.
Oh, dude, he's on the radio
Yeah,
all the time here.
I know it's insane. So is actually Ben Shapiro. They just added him to the local stations. But so I want to throw a caveat here about Michael Savage.
Sure.
The guy's a doctor, and he's like, isn't he like a biologist?
I have no idea, but that would surprise me.
I believe he is.
Our
Our comptroller's not here to look the stuff up.
but I
as
guess
we bring it up,
being college educated doesn't preclude you from being an idiot. And also, like, I'm going to be completely honest here. A lot of these right-wing talking heads are not dumb guys.
oh
They
no,
just get paid a lot of money to say dumb things.
yeah, that's fair.
So it's not like although like someone like Ben Carson, who actually is like, I know for a fact is a doctor, but he also will say just the dumbest things, and I do think that he might actually just be a dumb guy.
Oh, he's got a Master's of Science in Botany and a Master of Arts in Anthropology.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So he's a plant man.
Well,
Yeah.
anthropology is human history.
Yeah, so
So it seems.
it just that was one that always baffled me because I was like, really?
Mhm. Do you know
But-
Ben Shapiro's wife is a doctor?
I did
Do you
know
know?
that.
Do you know has he ever mentioned that before?
Oh, did you?
Has he ever said anything about
I
that?
know that he's 100% against people forcing his wife to give them medical care.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
made that pretty clear.
Yeah, no. Universal healthcare is forcing people to give you their life.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's essentially slavery, just
True.
like all the slave road workers we have, and slave teachers, and
Mhm.
slave police officers,
Oh,
and
yeah.
firefighters. They're all slaves, which is weird that
Yeah.
there's not an outrage about that we enslave all of these people.
Oh,
Like you
They're-
go to countries like Canada, all the doctors are in chains.
oh yeah.
All the doctors are in chains, and they're forced at gunpoint to perform medical treatment on
Yeah.
people. It's a nightmare.
I feel really sorry for them because I just can't imagine what kind of pain their fingers go through writing prescriptions for antibiotics.
Let's not like let's not demean doctors.
No, I'm coming for you, Dr. Brown. No, I'm just kidding. That's not a real. If any Dr.
like-
Brown's out there, pure coincidence.
It's like that.
but
It's like that. Did you ever hear that? You know who Jake Paul is, right? The YouTuber
the brother of whatever his name is.
Logan Paul.
Yeah.
Logan Paul's brother Jake Paul like released like a diss track to teachers. And it's just like, my teacher never taught me that, and he's just like talking trash on teachers, and it's like, dude, could you pick like a more like less deserving group of a diss track than
Like,
teachers? And then
how-
you just came in here and dissed doctors. I was like, hey.
No,
But
satire. Look
but
it
this
up.
idea though that like that like doctors wouldn't be paid. Like who,
Yeah.
who would even like?
Like there are there are legitimate questions, which is people can get into it, and that's really what will come down to, like, what what will it look like for them, and like the billing side, you know what I mean? But like from his perspective, totally not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Well, the idea with Medicare for All is that Medicare would just essentially be an insurance
Right.
provider, and so the same way that they get paid now, except
Yeah.
instead of being paid out from private insurance, it would be paid out from Medicare.
yeah.
So
it's
it
billing
would
Medicare.
be, at least from the doctor's standpoint, very very minimal
Yeah.
difference.
So, one good question I think I can ask is, like, do you think that more politicians and candidates and everything should focus on, like, misbilling Medicare? I know it gets brought up every now and again. I don't know how bad it is of like an actual problem, but
Did you say in
Like-
in Canada?
no, I mean like in here in
Oh,
the
okay.
U.S. Like the current Medicare that we do have for what is it, elderly and veterans
yeah.
and so forth. There's been several cases recently where they were overbilled or misbilled.
Yeah. So, from what I understand, that the reason that drug prices and like medical prices are so high is because hospitals operate on the assumption that people have insurance. So these prices are negotiated between hospitals and insurance companies, which is why the prices are skyrocketed so high, and why it really kind of screws over people who don't have medical insurance. So I think like without private insurance, then we'll start to see sort of a drop in price because there would not be like the for-profit motive kind of pushing for
Yeah.
having such high prices.
One thing I've always said too is I have a friend who has had cancer since I think she told me 2014 or something like that. You know,
Mhm.
she's gone into remission and came out of I think I don't want to misquote it, but she's got it again. That's my point.
Yeah.
And I kind of made a comment, and cancer is a very unique illness in the mechanisms that make it work. But I did tell her, I was like, if this wasn't all a money game, what kind of treatments do you think we would have?
Well, what do you mean? Like if research and development was completely handled by like public funding? Or?
Yeah, something like that. Like, let's say like if they made like a department of disease curing, and then they funded it fully and let them run loose and get the research done and make things happen.
Yeah, well, there's like, sort of the conservative argument against publicly funded research is like, how they will intentionally kind of drag out these government contracts as long as they can
That's fair.
to get money. So I don't know. There's definitely, for the more things that become government operated, which ultimately is probably the best thing, we definitely need more sort of watchdog organizations and like civilian controlled ethics committees that can monitor these sorts of things. So I see the argument of becoming like bureaucratic, in which like there's just all of these levels. Now we have this government research department, but then we have a watchdog organization that watches them, but then who investigates that organization, ensure that they're still being, so it can add up. But I do think that's the alternative is corporate tyranny, where everything is controlled by
predatory capitalism.
Yeah. So that seems to be, pick your poison. Like what's scarier?
I did listen to the Dr. Cornel West episode on Rogan.
Oh, that was my favorite one. That was my favorite one.
I think my speakers were just going bad because my truck broke down, so I couldn't listen to it fully right. So I did get to listen to it, and I did enjoy it, and I did like what he was talking about on that, about predatory capitalism and the roots of all that. But back to what you were saying earlier about like just all this bureaucracy and stuff. That's actually the biggest vote for governmental transparency, like having all that data available so that somebody can find it if they suspect something's going wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's the thing about the argument against like cleaning out corruption, which is sort of the right-wing position, is that like smaller government, less corruption. But how is the government corrupt? that's the question. The government is corrupt because they take all of this money and they're acting in the interests of these corporations. So the conservative solution is to eliminate the government and just put the corporations, the corrupting influence, directly in charge. That seems to be completely counterproductive.
Yeah. It is, and that word corruption, it's not. It's like one of those words, like not super hard to define, but then it's also kind of hard to define too. You know what I mean? And it gets thrown around so easily that it kind of loses its actual meaning.
Yeah, well, things become taken advantage of as soon as like people are always kind of looking to get an edge on something. So something like lobbying might have been an ethical thing to do at one point, like having sort of like a nurses union lobby a politician to give,
workers' rights and stuff like that.
And then
pro union right here.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if we could do a whole episode on unions if you want to.
We should eventually.
Point. Yeah,
I actually know a guy. He's the president of the or the elected president, I think of it might be ICBW. I'd have to look up which union he is, but I know him, and he's currently running for school board in the capital of our state, which I won't throw out so we don't
get doxxed.
Yeah,
I don't come at me.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, absolutely. What were we talking about? Sort of
just a little bit of everything, but we can move on and get on some. I got a few little bullet points here I thought would be fun to go over.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's
so in our first recorded podcast, we talked a lot about the value added tax and whether or not it was a sales tax.
Oh yeah, so you went in and
I did a little digging.
Okay.
So number one, super complicated.
Okay.
Well, and that's one of the arguments against it is it adds a lot of pressure to businesses to keep track of it. So it kind of works like this. So let's say a farmer sells wheat to a flour producer. So he pays the first part of the value added tax at whatever rate they set, and whatever he pays is deducted from what the manufacturer pays when they turn it into something.
Okay.
So then when they sell it, they pay a portion of the value added tax, and then they pay what's the remainder of that, and then the consumer pays what's left of that. So it's like taking the sales tax, and instead of putting it all on the consumers, you're putting it across the board for everyone. So it's a little more complicated.
Okay.
And kind of interesting to think about in theory, because I don't think we have a national sales tax.
I think it's set up by the states.
Yeah. There's a portion of state, and then some county, some city, and so forth down the line. But I don't think the federal government has taken that step yet, which is a good thing. They definitely should not, because I think I said in the other one, sales taxes are next to property taxes are probably the most regressive of tax structures, because the people who rely more on their rotating income or their spending income to get things accomplished, they end up paying a bigger bulk of that than other people do.
Yeah.
So little caveat on that there. I thought that was kind of interesting to really look into. So
has that changed sort of your opinion on Andrew Yang at all, like for or against the way that he's going to implement this new tax to pay for?
I don't like putting it on the consumer. I don't like anything extra on the consumer. It seems a little counterproductive, but that's also part of his argument for UBI is that it will cycle itself back in, because you're going to spend it and it'll pay for it back in. But it seems there's a very simple solution, and all he has to do is say consumers won't pay their part. Just eliminate that part from the plan altogether.
And that's
effectively problem solved.
Okay. Yeah, well, hopefully he considers that.
Yeah. Speaking of which, July 30th, Democratic debates.
Yeah.
I was kind of have an idea on that. I was kind of thinking if we watch them, we can do a companion show and react to them live as they happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that. I know Chapo did something similar to that, where they had the debate playing, like in the corner while they were commentating over it. Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing something like that.
My experience is Rogan does his MMA companions with shows that aren't UFC. He sits there and watches them live. You can't you have to watch it yourself to get his commentary and make it line up right. But
yeah, no,
I don't think we can stream the debates on our channel.
I mean, Chapo did it, and the volume was just really low, and it was like a nightmare trying to line it up with that.
It can be rough
because like there was a delay on
Yeah.
on their stream,
Right,
and then it
3
was
or 4
also like
seconds or
being
so.
streamed live, so you couldn't like so it was kind of tough.
Fair enough.
So what I had actually done is I watched the debates myself and then watched that stream separately.
Fair enough.
Couldn't really do it live.
Yeah, I think Rogan does he puts a timer on. They like kind of do their own sort of sync, and he's like, all right, this timer starts now. Then you can line up the reactions to it if that's what you're into. So I saw, moving on here, I saw an interesting headline. I've seen a few, but I thought this one stuck out because I get it. But not for the reason that this is happening. But it is I think, I don't remember what city it is, but they're using the Baby Shark song to drive homeless people out.
Yeah. No, I heard about that. I didn't look into it if it was like real or not.
Yeah, I didn't quite read it. I have it saved here. I can actually look at it, but I don't remember what city it was. But I was a little surprised.
Yeah, no,
aside from not dealing with homelessness as it should be, that song would definitely make people leave.
Yeah, and it's like
West Palm Beach, Florida.
I don't know. I mean, not only is it like a stupid idea that I can't believe somehow got approved, but it's also like such a dehumanizing thing.
Isn't
like
it?
That's how we're gonna. Why don't we just take all the homeless people and push them somewhere else? And it's just like rather than address the structural problems that lead to homelessness. Let's just keep them moving around. Like, let's put spikes on the benches and under bridges and stuff so that they can't sleep. And it's just
rocks everywhere. Like, you're hauling in non-native rocks, if that's a thing, and then throwing them about so people can't rest. And it's just like don't you like the effort you put into driving them away from places? Like, you could help them. No.
Yeah. Well.
It's like it's this idea of help yourself. It's so pervasive.
Yeah.
But like I don't remember the doctor, but there's a guy I think in Utah. This is actually a really cool thing. He's sort of the developer of the housing and harm reduction model, and I listened to one of his lectures or something, and he talked a lot about how like homelessness is almost a learned response. Like they would give homeless people like a free apartment for a year to get back on their feet, but like they wouldn't use the utensils or they wouldn't sleep on the bed because they were so untrustworthy. Like they didn't believe it was true and thought something bad would happen if they did. So they would like sleep outside the door, like little things like that. Like they kind of forget how to live.
Yeah,
in a way.
Well, you kind of exist with sort of this fear because you can get in trouble for anything that you do as a homeless person.
Yeah.
You can get arrested for loitering, you can get arrested for sleeping outside, you can get arrested for all these things. So they kind of live in this sort of constant state of like fear and mistrust of everything and everyone. And that's not to mention the fact that a lot of homeless people are suffering from mental illness.
Yeah. There's a few.
So yeah, it's funny how that seems to be the big sort of divide in the spirit of the country is sort of you have to, and I hate that that's the case, but you have to package things to sell it to the conservative base as economic solutions. Like, it's not enough to be like, if we give homeless people, like, we should get them off the streets and build them houses and give them a respectable standard of living. Like, that's not enough to convince people. But what you have to do is you have to package it like, this would actually save us money in the long term if we do something like that. Like, luckily, a lot of leftist ideas do save money. So that's kind of a good thing. But that shouldn't be the driving factor for why we do this. Like, people shouldn't die from lack of health care. That should be the argument, point blank, full stop. That's the argument. But instead, you have to package it like Medicare for all would actually save people money. Like, that's the argument that people shouldn't go into medical bankruptcy isn't good enough.
Here's a unique issue with that too. Like, talking about like just Medicare in general.
Sure.
Part of the Affordable Care Act, the government would fund the state if they expanded their Medicare solutions for people. Our state was not one of them, and we gave up millions of our own tax dollars to subsidize everyone else that did. But when you tell that to people, they're like, well, people shouldn't have government health care anyways. And it's like, hold on, you're already paying for it.
Yeah.
You've already bought the product. You just don't want it. It makes no sense.
Yeah. And it's the same thing for like a lot of things, like, the death penalty, for example. Like, it turns out that keeping people in prison for life actually saves money.
Oh yeah.
But you can't just say like, hey, maybe the government shouldn't have the right to kill people.
Fun fact
like that
for you.
Like that's not enough. You have to actually be like, hey, this will save money. That's the argument.
Yeah, that's the selling point. Fun fact: the Supreme Court has said today that it's okay for the Justice Department to execute death penalty.
Yeah, no, fun. Yeah. That is fun. That is fun because like it's funny because the people who cry the most about government tyranny seem to be totally fine with the government executing people. Like, why not? And to believe in the death penalty is like basically saying that you think that our justice system is 100% perfect. Like, there's no mistakes made because you're talking about the life of a human being. If there's even like a 1% chance that they're going to get it wrong, that alone should be the argument against the death penalty, but it's not.
Unfortunately, our current administration thinks that chicken farm level accommodations is fair. So,
yeah, and that's sort of like another thing too.
That's going to be a whole episode later on.
The way that we handle policing and the way that we handle prisons is probably not the way that we should. We have the highest like reoffense rate of any first world country, and it's because like, well, one, we have private prisons, which is already like an abomination that shouldn't exist. So we have a vested interest in making sure people reoffend so that we can keep filling up the jails. But also like, hey, maybe it turns out that like locking people in cages surrounded by other criminals and not putting forth any sort of job training or education or any sort of like psychiatric help and then re-releasing them probably isn't the best solution.
That it just reminded me of an article I read years ago. It was an article in the local newspaper that the local county jail was going to get rid of its basic cable. And I remember talking to a person about it, and they're like, well, they have better cable than I do. Why do they get cable?
Yeah.
And it's just like, hold on. Like, that's what you like, your issue here is the price of your cable, right? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, so why are you mad at them? Why aren't you mad at your cable company for being a monopoly?
Yeah. And that's sort of the whole thing where it's like, why do junkies get Narcan for free, but my insulin costs $900 a month? Well, that's the problem, is that your insulin costs $900 a month. It's not that this junkie is getting help,
Exactly.
Why are we taking in refugees when we have homeless veterans in the streets? It's like, yeah, we should help homeless veterans. What are you arguing about?
Yeah.
Here?
What are you asking me right now?
Are you getting at that we shouldn't help either? Because I feel that feels like what you're saying.
Yeah.
And they this idea that like things shouldn't, like, people are always arguing against helping other people, like if they're not getting helped.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like the whole giving homeless people houses thing. Like, I bought my house, I worked for it. Why should we do this to somebody else? It's like, why are you in favor of suffering? I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's like, it just, to me, it just boils down to this. It's like, we are the richest nation on the planet. And, you can divide that metric up however you want. And, you want to go by GDP.
Sure. Even
next to China, our economy is at least 10 times larger. So it just baffles me that these are actual problems that we have to deal with. Like, I don't know. It's one of those ones.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
I don't know. It's this idea of, God, it's so hard to explain because I have to get into just criticisms of capitalism in general.
Yeah.
But this idea of, it's been packaged to us as like freedom,
Yeah.
But in what way is this freedom? Like, at the end of the day, the moneyed class it's basically a casino.
Yeah.
And the money class the house, and they're always going to win. Sure, you'll have an exception where somebody is able to break through that threshold, but I just looked it up, and it's something like 60% of wealth is inherited in this country.
Yep.
If you are on the poverty line, you have less than a 1% chance of breaking into the Fortune 500's top earners.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's not a coincidence.
Oh, it's by design.
It's absolutely because I had an argument with my my stepdad, who is like a hardcore conservative, when we were talking about this, and he said that everybody has the opportunity in this country to do something great. But if that's the case, nobody would choose poverty. If everyone had equal opportunity, nobody would choose to be poor. And this idea is like, no, it's not equal, like, at all. If you have one subsection of the population that is going to, the way that schools are funded with property tax, better neighborhoods have more funding because they have higher, so they're getting better schools.
Right.
So, you have, people who are born going to great schools, getting to go to the top colleges, getting hired on to companies that their family works with, and they're just kind of set for life, versus somebody who's literally has nothing and has to build it up.
Yeah.
So that's why these like rags to riches stories are so compelling, is because that's the exception. That's not the rule.
Well, it's also kind of like a weird like media posturing in a way, because it's kind of like, look, everything's fine. This could be you if you put in the work.
Yeah.
I just don't fall for it.
And that's another thing about
you can work hard and get yourself somewhere comfortable for sure, but you cannot deny that the upper class, we're talking millionaires, billionaires, investors, blah, blah, blah. You can't deny that they have a head start on you. Like, you might be able to come up and make that, and that's awesome, and you should be able to. But you also shouldn't be in the inverse position where you're left behind, just literally because of gambling. Like, you lost the lottery where you were born. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no more class mobility.
Right.
The idea that's it's the saying of like, they started on third base and thought that they hit a home run. Yeah. And it's like, no, some people have it a lot easier.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
just the facts. And that's the thing about privilege, that people always think that it's accusatory. I'm not saying that you're wrong to have been born wealthy. And I don't know everyone else's situations. I'm pretty self-made, I would say. I moved out as soon as I was 18. My parents aren't particularly wealthy. Everything that I bought, like, I worked for, but there was definitely moments where I had fallen on hard times, and I had to, I had to ask my folks for some money just to make ends meet. And some people don't have that.
No,
some people don't even have parents that could shoot them an extra $200 to make rent.
They have zero support.
Some people don't have that. Some people have to go to school right at 18 to help their family that's living in poverty. Some people don't have the luxury of getting to pursue higher education. Some people couldn't, and this idea of privilege is, people inherently think that it's accusatory, and that, like, people hate me because of this or that. And it's like, it's not accusatory. Privilege isn't your fault. It's not your fault, and it's not something you should feel ashamed of. And it comes in just all forms. And one I like to point out when I have to explain privilege to people is that I am able-bodied. My legs work. That is a privilege. I don't wake up every day like crying, like, why was I given this privilege? But when I was 18, 19, and I had no job skills, the jobs that were paying above minimum wage were very physical jobs. I worked for FedEx. I was getting paid $12 an hour. At the time, the minimum wage was maybe $8.25, something like that. If I weren't able-bodied, couldn't have done that job. That's a privilege. That is a step up that I had over somebody else. So and privilege comes in all shapes and sizes. Like, I'm above 6 feet tall. That's a privilege. Right. Like, there's studies done that most CEOs are above 6 feet tall. There's a human psychological, connection. Like, short. Like, you go on any dating site, they always say, like, I don't want any guys under 6 feet tall. These are all forms of privilege, and these are all, the thing about privilege is what you're born with and what you have, and it's not something that you should ever feel bad about. But you should also acknowledge some people have it harder. Oh yeah, some people do. Being white doesn't mean that your life was easy. Like, life's shit wall to wall. Everyone has a hard life. Oh yeah. Like, life sucks, but the difference is that that's not the reason that your life sucks. Your life sucks because of all these other factors. You being white isn't one of those reasons. If you're black, there are things that you can look to and say, there's a reason that you didn't inherit any wealth.
Mm-hmm.
It's because black people weren't allowed to accumulate wealth for
Right.
a vast majority of this country's history.
Oh yeah.
So that's where privilege comes from. And it's not to say that you should feel guilty or feel bad for being this way,
Right.
but you should definitely not discount other people's struggles.
Right. You know, everybody is a person. They're just trying to make it.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunately some people are given in a way in the race extra weight to carry, you know. It's just
Sure.
harder.
Sure.
But so the next one I had,
We kind of went on a big
boy,
one there.
that was a good one. I like that though. So the next one I had, a little off topic. So we'll 180 this one here real quick. Something a little different.
Okay.
Did you see the Witcher trailer for Netflix?
I did not. I have not seen it yet. No.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
It was. It looks.
Yeah.
So,
What do you
looks.
think
It
about
looks so good.
Henry Cavill being what's his name, Geralt? I haven't
Geralt.
played The Witcher.
Well, to be fair, I've only played number 3, so
Yeah, they're
Well,
actually
I do.
porting it to the Switch. So that was
number 3's so good.
yeah, that was the
Wild Hunt.
plan.
I recommend it highly.
Yeah, no,
Everybody should play
I
it.
because my favorite game of all time is Dragon Age Origins, right? So I posted in like this gaming group that I was a part of, like if there are any games like similar, and Witcher 3 was the most recommended game that I try. Just never got around to it. So now that I have
It's good.
now that I have a Switch and it's getting ported to the Switch, I'm gonna get it. I'll get it.
It's good. I recommend it.
Yeah, no,
So,
absolutely. You a little bit nervous about Henry Cavill?
No, I think he's like the guy that they like that CD Projekt Red pays to like play Geralt, is he not? I thought he was a professional like cosplayer. Like they like.
No. Henry Cavill is Superman.
Is he?
Yeah, he's Superman in Man of Steel.
Well, he loses points for me.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that
Goku's
I guess
infinitely better.
he's in the Tudors,
Yeah.
which is like some sort of streaming show, and
Yeah,
I hear he's pretty good in that. But man, was he bad in the DC movies? Man, he was literally like a block of wood the entire time.
Right.
Which I
It's
guess
crazy.
if that's his take on Superman, that he's this weird inhuman alien thing, he nailed it.
Absolutely.
But he was also in. The first time I ever saw him was in this movie called Tristan and He's Old, which nobody's ever heard of except me. I bought it at like the $5 bargain bin. But James Franco's in it, and Henry Cavill is like his best friend, and it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet kind of story where these like two feuding families, and then
Right.
the son and daughter fall in love, and that wasn't a very good movie. But I do remember watching it and seeing Henry Cavill as James Franco's like best friend in that movie, and was like, man, this is a beautiful man. It's a good looking guy, right?
What? Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. I watched the trailer, and of course there wasn't a whole lot of speaking lines, and there's only so much we can do as a, it's a Netflix show, so the CG will be kind of mid tier.
yeah, I don't
But
think that should.
it shouldn't matter
Yeah.
though, because I love bad CG as much as I love good CG, and it looks good. I'm pumped. I always want to see it because I always like anything Witcher related. Haven't read the books yet though, so don't crucify me.
Do you remember like the author of the books? I guess like sold the rights for like $30,000 and was like, whatever,
Yes.
game's not gonna do anything.
That decision's going to haunt him because he did sue them later on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it almost just seems like if you're ever gonna like sell your property, like always put a clause in for royalties,
Yeah.
even if it's like 0.5%.
I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day because we actually talked about that, and I was like, I was number one. I was really happy that CD Projekt was like, yeah, we owe you. I mean, they didn't quite, legally they didn't say that, but
Yeah,
it was, they settled with him and gave him his due. But on the inverse, I think it was the actor who played the physical body of Darth Vader from the original trilogy.
okay.
I think he hasn't been paid a dime.
Oh,
Because
for his work.
extra, they put it in as part of you get part of the net profit, but because they keep reworking on it and re-releasing it and blah blah blah, they keep writing all that off. So I think his Return of the Jedi hasn't made a technical profit since it's been out, something like that. I'd have to look that up just to make sure.
Yeah,
So it's just one of those
rough.
contractual ones. So it's like, yeah, you're getting into it, and read the fine print. It's
Yeah.
one of my rules to life.
Yeah. It's funny that like I just don't have sort of this legal mind of like separating like everything into numbers, because like in my fantasy utopian world, like everything operates the way that like me and my buddies operate, which is like, we go to Taco Bell and they don't have any money. I'm like, I'll spot you like $10, but I don't like have a ledger of like you owe me $10 next time.
Yeah.
It's more of just like we just all get each other whenever it's convenient,
That's why I'm-
and it's sort of like
Hey,
if only the
welcome
world.
to the stream. Let's see, we got a new viewer. Welcome.
No way.
Yeah, we got 2 viewers right now.
What?
So hello.
Who is it?
I don't know.
What's their name?
I don't know how to tell. Be straight with you. Oh, they're gone.
Well, that didn't last long.
Well, bye. Yeah.
I like took one look at us and I'm like, it's
Yeah, we know what's
not
going
for
on.
me.
That wasn't even a bad topic, folks. That was a good one. That was a good way to get in on
Yeah,
it.
it's not a very divisive one.
Yeah. Crazy. So,
All right, what's next
so
on
now
the?
so now we're gonna talk about. No, I'm kidding. So the next one I had was an interesting article, and I'm gonna pull up the full headline because
Sure.
it won't be super duper controversial, but I thought it was kind of interesting. It's a Germany finally introduced mandatory measles vaccinations for everybody, regardless. There's
Okay.
no exemptions anymore.
Okay.
And,
like no exemptions. As in,
Everybody's getting measles shots.
what were exemptions like before?
I do believe. Let's see here. If I'm understanding it correctly,
Because I don't know if there are legitimate exceptions. I don't really like blanket policies on everything.
okay. So apparently, according to what I just read, it's kind of a short form article, so there wasn't a whole lot in it.
Sure.
But long story short, they don't already have a mandatory vaccination policy in place. They just assume everybody's going to do it. So
Mhm.
now they're just going to start requiring it in
Okay.
order to go to school specifically.
Okay. And, I'm not an anti-vaxxer at all. I know for a fact that it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do feel for the oppositional argument
Mhm.
of like the government could just do whatever they wanted, right? Like they could inject you with something with the, So I get the fear of it, sure. But I definitely don't buy any of like currently that's not happening, and you should absolutely vaccinate your kids. But I think a healthy distrust of the government is important.
Yeah. So we had another one pop in for a few seconds.
Oh,
And they
darn.
dipped out. I went ahead and removed MMA from the tagline.
Yeah, I don't think we talked
We're-
even
we're-
a second about it.
Not yet. I made a few references to it, but I mean, I'm not going to I'm not going to get into the card tonight. Max
Sure.
Holloway for the win.
Well, she's gonna lose.
All
and
the
we're
way
just
with
gonna-
Holloway.
He's gonna lose, and we're gonna like play that over and over again.
Don't worry. I'm a big Ben Askren fan. In the spectacular fashion he got KO'd in the last card, whatever. I don't even care anymore. Okay, so we'll get. I think we got time for maybe one more here.
Okay.
I thought about dipping into the Mueller report, but I think we kind of talked about that beforehand, and they didn't do anything different.
It's funny because Mueller has this like this persona of being like this straight shooter kind of guy. He doesn't answer anything. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Where did he get this reputation? Because it's just every answer to every question was, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Could he be indicted after he's not president? Yeah, sure. Will you? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. He's
It could happen.
Do you think it's almost like resigning from the spot when he did that was kind of like the worst thing he could have done?
Mm-hmm.
It's just he just didn't do anything. He might as well have read his report to them verbatim, word for word. It would have been the same result.
Yeah. What is this hearing for? Like, what is the intention?
Okay,
like,
so I think the idea behind it, at least from we got a new viewer. Hey, welcome. And the idea here is like you put it on video. This is 100% what it is. You put it on video. You ask him the questions you want. That's why somebody said, does this report exonerate him? Because that's what the president said. Does this exonerate me? And he said, no, it does not. But then that triggered the other side to say, well, was it your job to exonerate? And then he's like, well, technically no, but that's also a very broad question.
Yeah.
So it's just grandstanding from both sides. Al, I think it was Al Green. He did file for impeachment a couple weeks
just
ago.
got shit on by everybody. He was the only one who was like, let's do it. Let's try to impeach this guy. And everyone's like, sit down, dude.
I don't get it. I don't. I mean, I'm all for putting it in. If you believe it, number one, if you believe it, put it in. That's what you're there for.
I think that his move for impeachment was just based on racism, right? Like that was...
Yeah, it was over the comments against Omar.
Yeah, which I think is not the direction to go as far as impeachment. I mean, get him on anything you can. I'm fine with that. But I just don't think that that's one, it's hard to prove like intent. Like you still have people that don't think that Trump's a racist when it's like he's done all but flat out say it. So that's not the one I think that's going to be the one that gets him.
No.
Like racism is the one that's going to...
Yeah. I mean, so what he filed it under, sure. But when you, from what I get, like you introduce the articles and then you're supposed to vote on it and then you go from there. So the fact that they didn't even let it pass, this idea that these committees are going to be the ones that put the nails in his coffin, it's like you can impeach and these committees can still do their job. Like when history looks back, they're not going to say, well, we're so glad that the 5 committees found all their investigations fruitful. They're going to say, why didn't you impeach him? He's a criminal.
Yeah.
Because, I know, just to keep it a little we can dive deep into these topics a little bit later, but when you think about the presidents that have been impeached, that's the big one. It's stuck to all of them.
Yeah.
Even if Nixon didn't actually get to vote because he resigned. And my history could be wrong too, but
no, he did resign.
Yeah. Okay, I want to make sure I was right on that. I hate being like super wrong. I did a little. This is a little side note. I did a little political stuff, and I made a comment about solar panels and how Kansas gets a lot of sun. And a report I read said certain parts are similar to California. And my own party put me on blast, so. I was like, all right, didn't need to call me out like that, but at least my point got across. Yeah.
You know what I just found out? That's a little fun fact. When I was living in Colorado, it turns out Colorado statistically has the most sunny days of any state, including California and Florida.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
I can believe it, though. The high elevation, clouds only form at a certain point.
Yeah.
Outside of the 80 days of foot snow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was there
go
during
Broncos.
I was there during the winter too, and winters aren't particularly harsh there, or at least the one. I mean, I was there for 1 year, so I couldn't definitively be like winters are always fucking chill. But the time I was there, not the worst.
Well, there's that one section of I-70 that's always getting demolished by snow because it's runs right through the mountain off to the side. Yeah. So it is what it is. But
yeah, we had one viewer for a second. He took off, too.
Yeah, we had about 5 or 6 people hop in just to stick around. A couple of people stuck around for a little bit. Sure. This is it.
Honestly, I wish there was a way to see who it was, because we did it during our stream of Meow Zedong. Like, Baird was able to see the names of who was popping in, so we actually greeted everybody individually. I think something like that promotes a little bit of community engagement, So if there's a way to, like, get the names of people, we could be like, hey, what's up? Username.
Found it. It's right here.
Oh, okay.
Command bot, electrical calling board, and lurks. That's who came in.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Wish you guys stayed. Well, shout out to you guys for popping in for a little while.
If you guys are still here, show yourselves. We appreciate you being here. Feel free to chime in with any questions if you guys have them.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're still here, I only see one.
I don't believe that they are.
That's cool though. I'm happy.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm pleased.
So from now on,
this is where to be.
Yeah.
This show is gonna be good.
I sure hope so.
I do too.
Okay. What was the topic we were gonna go into besides the motor report? Because we did kind of go on.
I wanted to say something here, and I thought about it. Oh yeah, the last thing I wanted to hit tonight before we take off. Elon Omar, right? Minnesota, I think.
Okay.
Has a challenger.
Oh yeah.
I think Danielle something or other. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, and she's an immigrant from Haiti,
I believe. I'd have to check that one.
Yeah, I didn't read this one too much.
So the fun thing about her, arrested for felony theft the
Love it.
same day.
Love it. Beautiful.
Yeah. So there you have it. This is the world we live in.
Because you know that, like, everyone was gonna, like, everyone on the Republican Party was probably like super hyped to have like an immigrant, like,
Oh yeah, be on their
side, because they love it, because anytime that they can have somebody who they constantly like, who represents a group that they shit on all the time,
yeah
can come in and be like, no, these guys aren't bad.
yeah these are good people.
They love it.
I don't
So
get it.
like, but like the only time that they can find anybody, it's a criminal or like a grifter or just somebody. Well, I mean,
it's like when you join the party, they hand you a packet. Here's your complimentary jail record, and
there you go do crimes now.
yeah,
And
this is your free pass. We'll back you. Oh
But,
boy.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I almost sometimes wish that I were part of like a marginalized group, like if I were gay or trans or something, so that
Yeah.
I could sell my soul to right-wing talking points and just grift for people like, you know, Candace Owens or Dave Rubin.
Doesn't it just seems like it would be so much easier if you just hopped in and you're like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, you have someone like Steven Crowder, who was like a failed comedian. So he realized, like, I'm not going to get anywhere in this, but what I could do, because the right is so devoid of any sort of humor, I could be the best right-wing comedian ever, just because there's no competition. So he like pivoted over to there. Same thing as Candace Owens. She constantly talks about how like racism isn't real and, you know, white privilege isn't real, blah blah. Her career started when she was the victim of a hate crime in high school, and she ended up getting a settlement for, I think, something like $40,000.
Wow.
And that's how she started her media career. And now she pivots to saying racism doesn't exist. But like, and it's such a clear, like, this is just, you're just lying.
Yeah.
You've just sold your soul for profit. Same as like Dave Rubin, who constantly has to bring up like, I'm gay all the time, because he's just a conservative talking head and doesn't want, like, he wants people to like be like, well, he can't possibly be homophobic because he's gay.
Right.
So the right can't be homophobic. But it's like, he'll have guests on his show that are absolute, like, he keeps trying to be friends with Ben Shapiro. Like, he keeps trying to be his buddy, keeps inviting him over, and Ben's like, I don't want to go to your gay party. Like, that's verbatim what Ben said to him. And it's just like it's so clear that you've sold your soul for money. You've sold out like people going through the same struggles as you to make like a lot of money. And it would be so easy to do. Like we could make a business plan right now. We could start doing our like left-leaning talk show.
Mm-hmm.
And once we build like a decent fan base, we could just pivot to the right. Like sell out to the Koch brothers, and just be like, I was blind for all those years. I never believed in any of it. The left is regressive, and they're the real racists, and they're the real bad guys. And you could do that
you absolutely could,
because that's what Dave Rubin did. He used to be on TYT. Now he pivoted over to the right, complete 180 on all his political beliefs, and now all he does is shit on the left. And you could do that. We could absolutely do that. We could do that with like, as soon as we got even like 10,000 followers, we could pivot. And we just get massive funding. Watch, because we're actually going to do it. Like, someone's going to come to us with a contract and be like, we'd like for you to pivot to us.
And then zeros will be good to go.
And then one of our like longtime listeners is gonna find this clip of us explaining our business model. I'm like, this is the plan all along.
So this has been from day one.
From day one, we've always wanted to be grifters.
I put my integrity in a bottle and threw that sucker away. All right.
And we cutting it here.
Yeah, so that was good. That was good one. It was exciting to see a few different viewers, and
no, absolutely.
you know, I think once we really get a good schedule hammered out, we'll be on more frequently and more more structured and just be more inclusive. And
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
that, it was excellent. And we'll see you guys next time.
All right, see you later. Sour Source out.